Hey folks, Tom Amoroso here. We're trying a little experiment tonight. I'm going to be live streaming a class. So for those of you that joined the yoga class, thank you. Hopefully it was fun. For those that are joining in now or watching this after the fact, welcome. I'm here. This is Columbus Saber Academy. I am all alone. We are closed. But I did want to come in, and since I own the place, I can do that with no one else here and open the door and go online and go live with you guys in the environment that we're used to seeing. So what I want to do here, and hopefully the audio is okay, what I want to do today is walk through some fundamentals, right? I'm going to go through a class, probably take a good half hour, 45 minutes, maybe even an hour, depending on how much I talk and how much we do. Getting some background noise, it looks like in here. I'm by myself, so I'm just trying to work all the audio out at the same time. So hopefully that will sound a little bit better, and I'll kind of move this out a little bit. All right, so we're going to start off just like we do every class. We do a basic sun salutation, then we're going to do some footwork, some cuts, blocks, and then we won't do any partner drills, obviously, because I'm here by myself, and you guys are probably by yourselves at home. But we will do some cuts, and we'll do some basic cut actions and some double attacks, and hopefully it should be a good class. If you have suggestions of what you want to see and what you want to have covered, great. I want to do this again on Thursday, as long as I can get in here and we can have some fun and connect up online. So if I can, I will. Saber's down on the floor next to me here. If you don't have a lightsaber, hey, that's cool. Grab a stick, grab a broom, grab a sword, grab what you have, and have some fun. For those that aren't with me regularly or haven't trained with us at any of our events that we've hosted here, I do everything in a two-handed style. That's what we teach everyone. It's a bit of an amalgam between Japanese Kenjutsu and European longsword. You'll see a lot of parallels. I know that's a weird mesh, but it actually does fit together. Everything has been simplified. Everything's in English. I don't use any of the terminology from any of the schools and systems that we practice here in our HEMA space or that I've studied before, just to make it simple and approachable, right? So with that, if you're studying a system, you may see some differences with your system from what I'm doing. That's cool. Everything works for everybody. You be you. But if you want to follow along with what we're doing, great. Thanks. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, shoot me a message. Don't necessarily do it in the chat here because I'm not monitoring the chat, and no one's monitoring the chat on YouTube. So shoot me a message, shoot me an email, go up to our website, www.columbussaberacademy.com, and we'll talk through it. So, I'm going to do this sideways. Let me wheel that out of the way. So, feet about shoulder width apart, up to the ceiling. Nice stretch. Down to the floor, knees, ankles, toes, whatever you can reach and whatever this mic cord will allow me to do. Walk it forward into downward dog. Keep your butt up in the air. Point here is to try to push those heels towards the ground. Get a good stretch. Dive down and roll up into cobra. Stretch that lower back. Up into plank. Nice straight back. We got a plank challenge video out there, 2 minutes. Guys are doing a great job. For those that are doing it, you guys are doing awesome. So 2-minute plank drill. You can do it. It is attainable. And then we're going to go 5 minutes after that at some point in the future. Left foot up. Back. Right foot up. Back. Head between your arms, chin to your chest. This will stretch your upper back as well as getting that lower body stretch. And you can roll up onto your toes. Now walk forward. Stay in a squat. And stay in your tiptoes. We're going to roll up nice and slow on our tiptoes all the way to the ceiling. So reaching all the way up. And continue the reach. And now reach out to the walls. Get a good stretch. Wobbling is good. It means you're working your stabilizer muscles. The more you do this, every single time you will feel yourself a little bit more balanced. Then, of course, you'll have an off night and you'll feel all wobbly, and that's okay. Right? So let's do some footwork. You'll see a series of black lines on the floor. We use these here as guides for myself and the students. I'm a big proponent of footwork. Footwork is everything, right? Doesn't matter what you do, what sport you practice, what art you practice. Footwork is everything. You have horrible footwork, you have a horrible practice. Full stop. So, getting into guard, we use a basic, we're going to do a lot of linear footwork today. We're not going to do a radial footwork. We'll do that maybe on Thursday. We're going to go start right foot forward, and then we're going to switch to left foot forward. Getting into that stance is very simple. I asked everyone to put their feet a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. 2 steps forward with your 2 half steps with your right foot, and turn that back foot out. So my feet are roughly perpendicular. You can angle in a little bit with that back foot. Most importantly though, I really want this front foot pointing forward. Your toes have to be aligned with your knee, and which should be aligned with where your opponent is, or at least where you want to go. Because where your front foot points, that's where you're going to naturally attack. If you start to turn this foot out and yet want to go this way, so my foot's going here, you start to put a lot of stress on that knee, and we don't want that, because that's going to cause you problems in the long run, right? I've been doing this for God knows how long, 20, 30 years, whatever it's been, since the late 80s, mid 80s. Anyway, my knees are good because I tried it, and I had an instructor, and a few of them, that to this day bust my chops about footwork and alignment, right? Doesn't matter what we're doing. It kind of has to be entrenched in your system to do, in your body to do. So we're going to do some footwork. No blade in hand, no weapon in hand, just plain footwork. So again, 2 steps forward, right foot back. We're going to do some gathering steps. Gathering step, if you watch the footwork video, is a step with the front foot and a pull yourself in. I'm not pushing, I'm not jumping, because if I jump, I can't do anything until I stop, land, and then I can reposition. If I'm pushing myself forward, I can shift gears and change direction at any point in time. So, advance, 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 advance. Ultimately, don't look down at your feet, right? You want to look forward. I'm just trying to, it's a natural habit. Retreating, withdrawing steps. My back foot steps first where I want to go. I pull myself with my back leg into position. Remember not to, as I advance forward, I don't want to bring my feet together. Let me get back in camera here. As I advance, I don't want to bring my feet together, because then what happens, my head starts to make this sine wave, right? So let's go back. We're going to advance up front. Keep your feet at a distance with each other. I'm not being two-bladed. I can, but I'm not in here, and I don't ask folks to be two-bladed, but a nice, comfortable stance, right? Once we get to the end, we're going to do retreats. So step back, pull into place, withdraw, retreat. Good. Double advances. So 2 steps forward, advance, advance, stop. Look down. Where's my foot? Where's my other foot? How are my knees? What's my weight distribution? Should be about equal for what we're doing here. So advance, double advance, advance, double advance, retreat, double retreat, retreat, double retreat. Good. Switch your feet, left foot forward. So same stance, left foot up, right foot is out. Again, if we're here in the school and you're on these lines, the lines actually represent our center line, so our feet are on either side of the line. I am not slack rope walking on the tape, right? So advance, 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 advance. Retreat, step, pull, step, 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 step. Double advance, double advance, double advance. Good. Double retreat, double retreat, double retreat. Good. When you're home by yourself, when you're sitting at your desk at work, in your office, wherever you happen to be, on the warehouse floor, advances and retreats, same side. You can walk your whole day like this, right? Again, get that muscle memory ingrained in your system. Next, what we're going to do is a standard advancing step. So with the gathering step, if you notice, as you're doing this, whatever foot is forward, that's the angle your hips are pointed at. That's going to be your natural or strongest angle of attack. Right? Yes, I can attack across my hips. I'd rather not, right? So in this gathering step, it brings me into my opponent's measure, into the distance into my opponent, without changing the angle of my hips, so I can step in and cut. An advancing step, or passing step, everybody calls it something a little different. Essentially, my back leg is coming forward, my feet are switching positions, my hips are now facing the opposite direction. Retreating is the same thing, stepping backwards, stepping back. Some things I always tell you guys in class, and for those that aren't here, is when I step back, I don't want to have too many extra steps, right? It's not, right? I want to be confident, and I want to be quiet in my steps. So just making as few movements as I can to get to where I want to be. I have short legs. We talk about this in class all the time, right? Couple things to highlight. I like to just kind of go off on these tangents every once in a while. We step forward in a naturally a bigger stride than if we're stepping back, right? We step back, step forward in a bigger stride than we step back in, because we can't see behind us, so we don't take as big of a step. We don't want to lose balance. Our body is naturally leaning forward a tiny bit, so all those things factor into play. I have short legs. So when I'm against an opponent that's taller than me or that has a longer natural stride, I've got to compensate in my retreat. So I may take a bigger step back, which will cause me to kind of inch my front leg back a little bit. Or if I take a standard step, I'm to here. If I take a larger step, I actually have to kind of inch myself back. So that's fine if you're doing that. If you're taking that bigger step forward to get into your opponent's measure, or you're taking that bigger retreating step to get back, cool. If it works, great. And it will work, right? And it is something that I've had to do over the years, and I continue to do. But if you need to do that, you feel you need to do that, right? So just realize when you do that, though, again, economy of motion. I don't want to be taking these little stutter steps, because your opponent can start to read that. Your body language will reflect that, and you'll get too caught up in the body movements and not into the actual action and encounter that you're trying to get to. So I'm going to grab my saber, which I guess was off camera. All right, so I'm going to go through all the basics today. Sorry, guys, for those that are here all the time. Holding the saber, we teach a two-handed grip here. So this is a 15-inch hilt. It's one of mine that I've made. I've got a suba on the end. It's kind of a small one. It's not a full 3.5-inch suba. It's a nice 2 1/4 or so, 2.5. My right hand is more or less up toward the front. I kind of keep it a little bit off the front. Back hand is all in the bottom. This is a mechanical device. It is a lever. Yes, I can attack with my arms together. Is it the most mechanically efficient? No. Does it work at times? Sure, right? Generally speaking, I want a nice gap so I can take advantage of the fulcrum being my front hand and my back hand directing the movements of the blade. What we're going to go through is basic middle guard today, and then we're going to go through some cuts with high guard today, and then we're going to kind of expand on that as we go forward. So basic middle guard, feet are shoulder width apart. Take that right foot forward stance you just had for the footwork we were doing. Hand is out in front of you at about sternum height, maybe a little higher depending on where you want to place it. Very comfortable grip where you're shaking hands with a person. Saber goes in that spot. Backhand goes on. Tip is pointed out at my opponent's eyes, right? We as humans can't see depth perception. My guys hear this all the time. Sorry guys if you're out there listening. So pointing the blade at my opponent gives me a little bit of an advantage when I'm fighting with them, in that they can't see that length, and therefore they can't judge how far away I am or how far that has to travel before it can hit them. So middle guard, simple, right? Advancing in guard. This is a very straightforward middle guard. 3, it depends on the system, right? It's not closing an inside line or an outside line. It is right in the middle. My hand is very natural and linear perpendicular to the floor. My palm is facing out to the left. Advancing in guard. I want to keep my saber as quiet as it can be. I want my head to be as quiet as it can be. I don't want to be a bobber on the ocean, right? On the waves. I want to keep my head nice and level. I want to take my saber and my arms are extended. Pretend there's a little string on this pulling you into your opponent, right? I don't want a T-Rex. I don't want to fight with my arms crunched in. So arms are out, pushing forward. All right. Let's do some cuts. So we're going to do a couple different cuts today. We'll start out with the descending cuts, so the angular cuts coming down from shoulder to hip, right? If we're starting right foot forward, again, if we're traveling with our hips, I always want to cut in the movement of my hips. So the natural movement that my body wants to go is how I want to cut. So whether I'm standing in guard and I come forward and I do an advancing step, cutting through, right? If I want to change sides every step, again, my blade's going to go toward the, well, our front door is to my right, toward the right, around my head, step forward, cut. Toward the left, around my head, cut. Remember, when you're cutting, make sure you're not stepping before you cut. You are cutting and stepping. Actually, you're cutting slightly before it. As you come around your head, remember, there's a point when the blade wants to pull you forward. Let it. That means your blade will land before your step. Doesn't matter if you're punching, if you're kicking, if you're stepping forward or backward. You can see I naturally take that extra gathering step and retreat when I retreat to give myself a little extra space. Just become an ingrained habit for me. So let's do some cuts. We'll start in the back. We're going to do 10 cuts forward. I'm going to do them forward in one run, but then I'm going to do them in place, because you can absolutely do your cuts in place. I just want to make sure that you always align properly, hip alignment with your cuts. So step forward and cut. 1, 2. I'm doing half cuts here. 3, which means I'm starting in guard and ending in guard. Retreating. Good. Do them in place. So, again, I'm doing a half cut. I said this in one of the videos. I say it all the time. Picture a bubble around your opponent, right? If I'm doing a full cut, pop, pop, popping through the bubble into low guard. Pop, pop, each side. Pop, pop, into a low guard. If I'm doing a half cut, I'm ending in middle guard. Inside middle guard, outside middle guard. I'm ending in middle guard. I'm always presenting a threat to my opponent. If I come through with a full cut and I go into low guard, if I go too far, I start to bring my head forward, which I don't want. But if I go into lower guard, it might be for a reason that I want to suck my opponent in to do a back edge cut as I'm coming out, or come through in a back edge cut around, right? So a lot of options. It really depends on your plays and the things that you want to try to accomplish with your opponent and where you want them to go. For these cuts, and for any cut you practice, I want you to practice either a full cut or a half cut, but don't forget about doing both, right? So in place, step forward, cut, step back. Feet together, back. Good, cool. So we're going to do a few different combination cuts today, a feint to a secondary cut, and then we're going to do a 3-layer cut down, talking about measure a little bit. And we'll continue that on Thursday as well. Where to go from here? So let's talk about shoulders. Well, let's do a nice cut drill. So we were just doing the one singer. So we'll start with right foot forward, left foot back. And it's a forward and back drill. It's actually a really nice drill. I haven't introduced it in the class yet. I will do that, and we're starting it here. So I'm going to cut forward, step forward. I'm also going to step back with the same leg and cut back opposite side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Switch sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So all my cuts are done from the shoulder for these drills. I really want to work my shoulders develop that muscle memory. I could easily do them from their elbows or from the wrists, and we'll talk about that as we go forward. You can do that same step forward, step back drill, 1. With any of the cuts, horizontal cuts, upwards cuts, 2, bang. Right? So that's a nice little back and forth you can do with very little space. Let's talk about, usually I get a few questions or somebody says, hey, I want to cover, and that brings me right down a track. So let's talk through distance and measure for a little bit. It's kind of difficult with one person. Essentially what you want to look at is if you're across from your opponent, one of the most important things you can start to learn is understanding how far apart your opponent is from you. Meaning, what does it take for me to hit my opponent, and what does it take for my opponent to hit me? If we can both step forward 1 step and all of a sudden be in measure with each other, meaning we can hit each other without touching each other, too close, right? Because again, I want to look at what options do I have to make my opponent do what I want them to do. So if we only have 1 step and before we're actually hitting each other, there's not a lot of room there to manipulate my opponent. And I've said this and we've joked about it, right? Fencing is just a sport of influencing your opponent to do what you want them to do. So essentially a sport of lying to your opponent, right? Because it is a fight in the end. So I'm going to bring the bag out. I didn't know if I was going to do this or not, but we'll do this. So give me a second here. Let me wheel this out, see if I can make this work for us. We haven't named this guy. I don't think we ever will. That's our bag. My blade is 15 inches and 32, so they're about 48 inches, right? So about 4 feet, let's just see. Yep, exactly 4 feet. So there's 4 feet to my opponent. If we're this close to each other, we are fighting, right? There's no question about it, right? This is not time to think. This is time to rely on muscle memory, and the plan you made 12 feet out, you are now in fighting distance. When we do the drills that we do, and if you go to a couple of the videos we just posted, the 2-person drills that the partner drills we just posted, that Tanner and I were doing, we are this close when we start. Because again, their blade is here, I'm here. So we are in measure with each other. If I take that and I go another 4 feet out, right? 1 step, we're within measure for each other. So 1 step, right? So you want to make sure you're out of measure. That being said, this gives me an opportunity to kind of do things that will prompt my opponent to do what I want them to do. So let's go through the cut and then the feint. So if I'm here and I throw a cut to my opponent, I'm way out of measure. I'm not going to hit them, obviously, right? Doesn't mean they're not going to respond to my attack, though, right? Doesn't mean I'm not going to understand their thinking by me throwing a cut. So it's called throwing a false attack. I'm out of measure. I'm throwing the attack. It's even a little too far away for a feint, because a feint, if you throw a feint, right, you want to be able to land that feint if you can. And if not, you want to drive your opponent to make the attack or the parry or attempt the parry, which then allows you to redirect. So anything where you can't actually hit your opponent is not, I wouldn't call a feint. I'm sure others will debate that with me, and that's cool. I love those discussions. But essentially, if you're out of measure, meaning I can't hit my opponent, right? It's an out of measure attack, right? So what I want to do, I'm going to be in left foot forward, middle guard. So why am I in left foot forward, middle guard? Well, I want my first cut to be a stepping cut to cut them from my right to their left. For me to do that, I want to be able to prep that action. So I may be here in a shoulder guard, I may be up in a high guard, I may be in a middle guard. It's kind of independent, irrelevant, because in the end I'm doing a downward diagonal cut. Matter of fact, if I start in middle guard, to do that I've got to move into one of the high guards in order to make that cut. So if I can be in that high guard to start, it's a more direct, or it's a prime cut from that guard. So what do I want to do with that? Again, I want to prep to my opponent. So as I cut, I want to step out of measure into my attack. What is my opponent going to do? They could try to parry it. They could flinch. They could not understand measure and think I'm going to hit them and react and move. I can learn a lot about how my opponent thinks by doing these kind of drills. It doesn't always work, and it isn't going to work more than once or twice in a bout because your opponent kind of picks up on it. But it does give you an opportunity. So, step in, step, cut. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a secondary cut. We're going to step out angled and strike to the outside. So step, step. Now I'm a little farther than I might be with an opponent, but that's okay. We still connected, and that's the most important thing. So, two-step drill, left foot forward. Step, false attack. Around, strike. If you get your opponent to go for that first attack, great. That will open up whatever side. So if they're here and they see you coming in and they try to do a parry, or if they try to void, they're going to put themselves into the position of your second attack. It's kind of what we want, right? So, one more time. We're here. Strike, strike. Yes, I talk and make a lot of noises. For those that don't train with me often, I make a lot of noises when I fight. 1, 2. Now, if you notice the strike and the movement with my hand, that secondary cut is a wrist movement. I'm pivoting my wrist of my front hand. Don't move it though. I just kind of go from palm up, or in the false attack, palm up, to palm down in the actual attack. It's still aligned with my hip. I'm still moving through the attack with the hip. What's driving my blade is my left hand. Now, I don't care if you're a lefty or a righty. If there are lefties out there, sorry. Right hand on top. How I train everybody to start off with. Over time, if you want to adapt and go lefty, great. If you did the long sword yoga class, we always switch hands when we do the positions because I want you to get used to using your left hand. But the techniques, we will teach them all right-handed to start. So again, I'm left foot forward, false cut in, step out, pivot the arm around, strike. What I always say is your lead arm is more of the power and direction, or power where the direction and the angle and the movement comes from the back edge. I don't want to cut and then rotate from the front hand around for the strike. So I don't want to do, hopefully you can see the difference from that one to that, right? My backhand moving with the cut to direct the attack versus my front hand coming around. One, sorry, I'm trying to think of the right word. Anyway, the length that's moving, I'm just going to say it, is shorter when I pivot the backhand, so it's quicker. The length now comes from the pommel to the tip to bring it around, so it's slower, right? And that fraction of a second does make a difference with your opponent. So again, one more time. Left foot forward, strike. Remember, if you're going to strike out, don't close that back foot because you want to be over there as your second step. And if I close that back foot, if I keep it there, great. If I close that back foot, I got to go way over here for that secondary cut, and it's just not going to work, right? You might get it off, but it's not going to work in reality. So step, step. And I was just out of measure with that one. Does that make sense? I hope. As the opponent, right? Let me tell you the other side of this coin from my perspective. Again, there's always a if we love doing that here because there are if you get 5 people, you're going to have 5 different opinions on why that should work, shouldn't work, is it right, is it wrong? Cool. Right? What we're learning here are mechanical movements. We're learning concepts and fundamentals that you can then apply, develop into muscle memory, and put into your whatever application you're using, right? We kind of, sorry, sidebar, right? We've said this a lot. We practice martial techniques developed around a system. How we apply those techniques could be for a tournament, which has a set of rules, and every tournament could have different rules. So we have to adjust how we apply those techniques to those rules. We could be doing a performance, choreography, stage combat. Again, I want to perform martial techniques because that's what is real, and that's what gives the realism, right? So if I do that, my application of those techniques are different on the stage. I don't want to really hit my opponent because I'm acting with them, but I want it to look like I am. So I want to do the most correct and efficient and optimized movements for that. I might be doing this for protection. I might actually want to learn how to fight on the street with this because I do that. And I carry a sword, I'm fine. Absolutely great. Sticks, antennas, it all works, right? So again, the application of the technique may differ. The technique should be the same. You should be studying the technique because that will allow you to then apply it in a whole lot of different ways, right? Even if you're in here just to get more fit and to understand how your body works, awesome. Using the right techniques and the right mechanical structure, you will be able to understand that, and you can do that, and it will actually make you a healthier person, mind and body. So, I'm the opponent, right? My opponent is that's now the person that I'm going to do this against. In their mind, what are they looking at? They're looking at my feet, right? I'm up in a guard that has a natural highest probability strike of coming down at them. I'm also with my left foot forward, my back foot back, so even a higher probability that I'm going to step in to the attack. So I'm just going to, as I'm here, I'm like, left foot forward, high guard, they're probably going to come in with an attack to my left. Cool. I should be able to sit across from him and go, he can't hit me from there. He's not going to hit me. If I can measure that and I can see that and I can do that calculation in that fraction of a second, great, right? Because then this false attack becomes a, yeah, okay, fine. I know you're going to go over here and I'm waiting for you to do that so I can counterattack in the middle of your movement, right? So you want to be able to not only set yourself up to perform a good mechanical action and trigger your opponent to move where you want them to, you as the opponent want to be able to see that and start to recognize that. So where do you look? Look at their feet. Don't stare at their feet though, because that can trick you every day. Look at where their body position is. Look at the guard they're taking, the invitation they're giving you, the stance or position their body is in. Where is their sword? Right? There's only so many, think of it as probabilities. I was taught this and I love the way it was taught and I try to repeat it all the time. Think of probabilities. If I'm in a high guard, the highest probability attack and the I want to say quickest because speed is an illusion sometimes, right? So the highest probability of the attack that person is going to throw is going to be straight down or at an angle, right? Can someone from high guard throw an ascending cut? Absolutely. They have to pass into low guard in order to do that. So they've actually got two segments of the move, of the technique. So technically, that strike from a high guard is going to be slower than the same person throwing the strike directly down to their opponent. There may be a reason they're doing that, and there may be a strategy and a way of thinking for doing that. Cool. But if you're against an opponent, if we talk on probabilities, highest probability is they're going to strike down at you from the top. Think about that. Where's their foot placement? If I'm here, right foot forward, swords up in my right to my right shoulder, right? Interesting. If he steps this way, he's going to come around his head into another guard to make the strike. Okay? Or he's going to do a gathering step to make that strike. Again, highest probability, right? Gathering step doesn't move you forward as far enough. As opposed to, hopefully you saw that difference in distance. So if my right foot is forward and my opponent sees that, they're going to think, oh, he wants to do the cut, highest probability cut straight down. So that means he might have to do a gathering step, which means he's going to potentially be out of measure or at a shorter measure. Maybe I can take care of that. But it's also a quicker step and it's a shorter step, so it will take less time. All those things come into play, and I didn't really think I would go down this path, but we did. So that's cool. Let's look back at this again, this false attack. So left foot forward, right foot back. Throw the false attack out. Don't close that foot. Keep it where it is. See what your opponent does. I'm throwing a half cut. Come back around, pivot at the wrist to make the final attack. So my intended target is the side of their head on the inside, or their arm if it's on the outside, if that's a farther target. In order to do that, I want to suck them into the position potentially and come around. If I'm closer and in measure, I can do that as a feint. So if I can come forward and I can strike and hit them with this attack, but I want to do it in a way that gives me a better target, because right now they could be very well guarded on their inside. kind of open on the outside, but they may be expecting that outside strike. So what I want to do is I want to draw their blade and their attention to the inside, shift gears, and come around and strike on the inside, on their outside, excuse me. A lot of concepts in there that I want to try to cover. So again, strike out. If you can get in for the strike and they're slow about the response, hit, right? My intention though is to draw them out to give myself a better target. So if I can strike right before that end, I come around and come to the opposite side. And again, I'm making that movement with the pommel of the hilt so it goes over quicker. My front hand moved from here to here. It moved from here to here. It didn't move. My hand didn't move. My body moved. My hand didn't move. The pommel moved, right? As opposed to my hand really did move, and then it takes forever and will have less effectiveness. Now, again, feint, come around. If you see your opponent going for that block, step out and strike to the opposite side. If they're slow on the draw and you can hit, right? You want to do the attack as a fully committed attack because, I want to really convince them that I'm going to hit them to really draw that block in. And we'll talk about it from a defense perspective in a second from the other side of the coin. So again, step forward, in, right at the last second, come around and strike. So the foot movement is step forward, out. Step forward, out. One last foot movement before we go to the opposite side. I want to get out of this picture, right? Feint, strike, clear back, step back. Bring myself back out of measure. Because inevitably, they're going to swing at me, right? Whatever art you practice, most allow for an afterblow, or I'm not going to tell them, well, once you get hit, you can't swing back. Because if they're in mid-swing, they're going to try to hit, right? It's just kind of a natural reaction. Some tournaments will reward that, some won't. Regardless, though, if I'm on the street, I don't want to get hit if I just hit my opponent. I want to be able to get out of the way. So it's strike, feint, step back. And I always want to step back in guard. One more time. Step forward, feint, step out, strike, step back out of guard. And you'll see I'll actually do it. So strike, I'm left foot forward, step back, retreating step, or step back, withdraw, gathering step, withdraw to get out of measure, depending on where I want to position myself to my opponent. Does that make sense? So, out of measure attack, false attack. Intention is the same, to trigger a response on our opponent, right? In measure attack, feint, strike, around. The trick with the feint is if you can land it, land it. If you can't, it becomes that feint, you draw the defense, great, because they're going to open themselves up to the outside. Now let's go to the other side of the coin and talk about the opponent in that one, right? So I have someone coming at me. Let's put a few scenarios on place. I know their distance. I know that they can hit me from the position they're in, right? I want to defend against that. I want to parry that so I can counterattack. So I'm across from them. They're in shoulder guard, right? So they're in bomb tog. They're up here. There's all different. They're in a shoulder guard in the saber. They're going to come down. So they're going to step in for that first attack, land it if they can, feint if they need to, come around and strike to the opposite side. Descending cuts, both of them. Right? If I'm in middle guard, I'm out to my opponent, and they step forward, I'm going to let them run themselves right through. Right? They've got to address my blade before they can hit me. So I'm not giving them any incentive to do this, right? I want to set up, so now I'm the other side of the coin. I want to set up a scenario that, again, makes my opponent do what I want them to do. My opponent wants me to do what they want, and that's the balance in the chess match back and forth between two fencers. So I might have started in middle guard. I might drop down to a low guard. I might drop down to an outside low guard. Right? Something to get, I might even step back and really give them that shoulder. Something to say, they want my outside shoulder, let them take it. The same way they're thinking, ooh, he's giving me the outside shoulder, but I'm going to hit him in the inside of his head, so I'm going to feint. So, give them the attack. If I stand in middle guard, they have no reason to attack me, right? Other than engage my blade, maybe do a beat away, displace it, create a new center line. We'll talk through all that stuff at other classes. So, middle guard. I see him go up. I might step back. So my opponent's across from me. I didn't change measure. I just brought my right foot back out of play, kept my left foot exactly where it was, but my shoulders stayed forward. So I was here, right? Now, I'm expecting them to come to my shoulder. Highest probability of attack, right? So I want to throw a parry. I want to throw that block or that parry as late as I can, meaning I want their strike to be as close to me as possible so they can't redirect their attack. My opponent wants me to block early so they can say, ha-ha, and come around and hit me on the other side of the head. I want to parry as late as I possibly can. So I might wait, parry. Now, if I catch them in a block, great. What have I done? One, I've stepped back, so they'll probably pass right past me if I didn't block it, right? I went from here, where they know the measures to my shoulder, to here, where the blade should go, whoosh, right in front. Footwork will keep you safe all the time, and I say this all the time for us, right? So footwork will always keep us safe. The block, or influencing their blade, changes their thought process. It interrupts their plan, right? I have 3 attacks in my head. Oh, you just stopped me at the first one. Ugh, now I got to readdress and redo my attacks. So, parry as late as I possibly can. That way it forces them to commit to their action. Once they commit to their action, great. Now it's a whole new game. Because they had a 2-step process in their mind. I've now stopped that at step 1. It also puts me on the inside of their blade, closer to their body, where I can then control or influence, keep their blade out, either to come in for some kind of counterattacking thrust, or to beat their blade away, displace around. There's a whole host of things you can do and actions you can perform once you have influence and control over their blade. But what did I do to get there? I watched where my opponent was. I kind of figured out what the highest probability was. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. I was right in this case. I avoided the attack, so I was safe, but I also parried it as late as I can to commit to their attack. If I did it too early, they're going to, again, feint and come around. Now, if I do it properly and I come back, I should still be in front of my body to very easily redirect my blade to the outside, well, now my inside, right, to parry their secondary attack. Right? But even if they do it, if they come in and they're too slow about it, realize that all I'm doing is moving my blade from one side of my body to the other side of my body if I have to parry that secondary attack. If not, I move the blade from one side of my body into my opponent's head. Right? So let's look at both sides again. This is odd to do both sides with one person. Sorry about that. Hopefully it's translating okay. So left foot forward, shoulder guard, stepping in for the strike. They came early, took the feint, come around to the opposite side. Cool. Raw mechanics, block, block. Right? So the defender comes in. I don't move. I don't void. I give him my left side, parry, outside, middle parry, inside, middle parry. Now I've just kind of protected myself with this little cone of protection over my body. Right? If I really want to get fancy, I may step back, which now takes me out of measure to their attack and allows them to continue in, and I can even step back again and strike to the top of their head. So as the defender, I can be here, step back, strike. Right? Their momentum is going to take them forward. Their actions were taking them forward. I want to read those actions and attack. So, all right, what did we just go through? Wow, it's 10 to 8. I didn't realize it would be that late already. We went through footwork, right? Advancing step, right foot forward, in guard, right foot forward. Retreating steps, stepping back, pulling into position. We went through middle guard, right? We actually went through shoulder guard. So let's do that officially now. We are in a natural position, or you're starting your opponent, fight against your opponent out in a guarded position. I want to step back into that left foot forward shoulder guard, right? That action should hopefully draw them into me, right? Everything has an action and consequence to it. If you're doing a move that doesn't have an intended purpose and a consequence, why are you doing that move? If If you want to prance around the ring, sorry, wrong term. If you want to run around the ring, or if you want to circle me around your opponent, and you're doing that for a purpose, good. Whatever that purpose might be is personal to you, you're good. If you're trying to do it to get my head around too quick, or to not be able to see, or confuse me, or to crunch up my feet, great. If you're just doing it to do it, or you don't know why you're doing it, ask yourself, why am I doing this? What can I do to be intentional with my movements? Because that's what's going to make you capitalize on your opponent and be able to win a bout or survive an encounter, right? So, shoulder guard. Start off in middle guard. Give anybody, any age, anywhere, a sword or a piece of stick or a piece of or something, and they're going to go in middle guard. On guard, they're going to be here, right? So, if I'm here, I want to move back and I want to draw my opponent into me. I'm going to step back into this shoulder guard. That movement should help to pull my opponent into my space, which then I can then capitalize on. What is that shoulder guard? So I'm going to turn this way for this. So, left foot forward, right foot back. Take your right hand, raise your elbow, bend it at your elbow. That's where it goes. I'm not trying to force it higher as a basic, right? Yes, I can be here in a shoulder guard. Yes, I can be over my head in a high guard, right? I can be out to the side in a high guard. But a very natural high guard that still affords this linear movement for the attack, right, has to be very natural. So that means I want to almost chamber it like a punch, right? So if I punch, I want to punch a jab from my shoulder. It's actually a cross, not a jab, sorry. If I want to punch across from my shoulder, I want to come out straight. I don't want to come down, it's a different punch. I don't want to come up, it's a different punch, right? To do that with a sword, simple, relax your arm, bend it up, put that saber there, grab the bottom. I don't want to force it because then I get this weird shape with my wrist here and I start to lose all some mechanical structure. Yes, there is a guard, and yes, there are guards out there that have my hand straight up and down my blade. Cool. For this, what I'm teaching is out in this very comfortable so that my hand pushes out and I use my bottom hand to help direct the attack. I can push out and direct to the side. I can push forward and direct in. All right? Again, it's a lever, and this is the fulcrum in my center hand. So, shoulder guard. Out. Again, I want my strike to land about the same time as my step, maybe a fraction of a second before my step, so it's bang through my opponent, right? And that's where I always say, picture that. If you're casting a line, I don't fish, but I think that's a good, I've used it in class enough, right? Stepping forward, it will pull me into my cut. And I try to always just close my eyes and feel the cut movement. Throw it there, right? So we talked about single attack from shoulder guard, right? Where do I want to strike with? Covering a whole bunch of different things today because why not? Top, not even top third, top quarter, top fifth of your blade, right? Anything closer, I'm too close to my opponent. This is a 32-inch blade, I think, thereabouts. If I end up here, and this is my opponent, if I end up close enough to hit them with my strong, the fork of my blade, I am way too close to my opponent, right? Things went wrong for me to get here, right? The HEMA systems, we can grapple and do some hand-to-hand stuff when we're in close like this. Awesome, right? And highly effective. But I've got a 3-foot weapon in my hand, and if I end up hitting someone with the strong of it, I'm much closer than I need to be. So think about that, right? That's all about measure and distance, because your opponent is moving in, you're moving in. You want to be able to maintain that distance. We do a really cool shadow drill, and I recommend it if you've got, your significant other, your kids, your grandparents, and whomever. Grab your neighbor, right? 6-foot distance. Remember that? Keep that out there, right? Both line up, and just as one person walks forward, the other person walks back. Maintain that distance between each other. It's a great way to start measuring distance to each other. Measure, right? That's the term, right? Reading the measure between you and your opponent, the distance between you and your opponent. The best compliment you can get is, man, I couldn't hit you. You're always just outside of range. Yeah, because I'm understanding how far you are to me and how far I need to move to get into the place where I want to be. So, a lot to think about, right? As always, first time, right? If you have any questions, ping me. We can talk through them. Hopefully we'll start classes here in a month or so more, but I'm going to keep whatever Ohio says. But I will hopefully continue to do these live streams. If you found them useful or find them useful, great. If you want to see something particularly covered, happy to go through it. If I don't know it or not comfortable with it, I'll pull one of my guys in and ask them to do it here for the night. But again, I kind of enjoy doing this tonight. So we kept it pretty simple. We looked at footwork. We looked at middle guard, shoulder guard. We looked at the downward angled cuts, right? From our right, from our left, the drill where we cut one direction stepping forward, one direction stepping back. So my right foot in this one will stay static. Step, 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 step. Left foot static. It's a nice drill that gets you in and out as you're attacking, especially if you don't have a lot of room to walk. And quite honestly, even if you do, it's a very practical drill because I don't want to step back 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 steps necessarily, because that'll take me too far out of measure with my opponent. And I want to stay at least in a fighting measure, in a distance that allows me to control the match as best as I can. We talked a little bit about out of measure attacks, false attacks. So they're fake attacks, attacks that would not land to your opponent because I'm simply out of measure. Now, if I land an attack that I intended to be an out of measure and they step forward and I hit them, cool, right? So we talk about false attacks and what that can do, and then a setting up for a secondary attack to bring you into measure. So walking from out of measure false attack to an in measure attack. And then we talked about feints and both sides of the equation for that feint and for the out of measure attack if you are in measure with your opponent. So if I'm here and I can hit with the first strike, but my opponent throws a block early or throws the parry early and I want to be able to take advantage of the opening they're giving me, great, right? So a feint to one side, or I want to drive in there. One mistake people make with feints, and it's very common, and I do it all the time too, right, is throwing the feint too shallow, throwing the first cut attack too shallow, right? So people will feint and they'll be like, well, this a little cut here, if I'm the opponent, it's not going to hit me because you're not throwing it with intention, right? So if someone feints, it's like throwing a punch and punching here is the feint, is the fake punch. I'm nowhere near hitting my opponent. Yeah, I might trigger a reflex action, right? And in a good fighter, you're not going to trigger the reflex action. They're going to actually catch that and capitalize on it, right? So you got to think, if you're going to throw the feint, right, and you can land it, land it. If you can't, that's when you come around and redirect to the opposite side, right? So make your feint intentional. I want to hit you. You're actually parrying. Maybe you're parrying early. Great. I can take advantage of that. What it really means is you've got to be present the entire time you're fighting. And we don't talk a lot about presence, or at least I haven't in the past directly talked about presence. But you have to be mindful of what your opponent is doing. You have to be observant of your opponent. This is not a purely physical, and it's, I would almost say physicality of it is tertiary, right? It's a mental game, and it's a game of observation. So it's paying attention to things. So if you want some homework that isn't sword related or saber related, pay attention to your surroundings. When you're walking down the street, or when you're going to work, or when you're walking in the park, or whatever you're walking your dog, pay attention to what's happening around you. The more observant you can train yourself to be, the more you can apply that in an encounter with your opponent and hopefully capitalize on that. So it is 8 o'clock. I think we've been going just a little bit shy of an hour. I need some water. I'm tired. We did the long sword yoga before this. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll be recording it and posting it, so for those that want to take a look, you can, and reference back to it. Cool. I really appreciate everybody that's joined in. I didn't even check. I don't know if I have 1 person or 50 or 0. I have no idea, but it was fun for me to do, and it got me thinking a little bit too. So hopefully those that joined in or those that watch this after the fact get something out of it. Again, if you want to see something for a future class, message me, text me, shoot me an email through the website, send me a message through Facebook, whatever you want, and we'll look to add that in. So with that, we're going to close with the same stretching routine we always do. So if you are online and you are with us, we're going to stretch the same way. Oh, and by the way, if you drop your sword or saber, it's 10 push-ups. So from here, reach up to the ceiling. Bend down, touch your toes, knees, ankles, floor, whatever you can reach. Walk it forward, downward dog. Stretch the lower legs. Dive down and roll up. Sorry about that. Scrape the mic on the floor. Up into plank. Back up into downward dog. Chin to your chest, head between your arms. Flex those feet, kind of roll forward a little bit. Give yourself a little extra stretch. Walk in, stay on your tiptoes, stay in a squat between your arms. Roll up nice and slow, all the way to the ceiling. Maybe you heard that crake and crackle in my knees. It happens. All the way up, and then out to the walls. And down. Thank you all very much. If you were on, great. If you watch after the fact, thank you for checking it out. And any questions, reach out, check out our channel, and subscribe. And hopefully I'll see you in class. We'll get these doors back open in a month or two, I hope. We will keep doing this, though, until then, because we got to stay connected and we got to stay moving. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Have a good night. Cheers.